Welcome back to Do the Work. My name is Arya Davachi. I'm coming to you live from Southern California. Um, it is Wednesday, December 18th. I am so thankful to be here with all of you and be talking through our last panel for the year. It's kind of wild to think that 2024 is almost over, depending on how your year has been. Maybe you're like, thank Christ. Um, I want to just start before we do anything by giving a huge thank you to the Do the Work production team for making these happen. It's a very strange reality when the camera comes on and it's me having these conversations, and then suddenly we are like amongst like these incredible panelists every month, and it makes it seem as though like yeah, I am a one-man band, if you will, and that is so not the case. And so I just want to start first and foremost by thanking the folks that do the work who make this happen and allow me to be the programming director for our organization. If you are unfamiliar with the organization, Do the Work is an organization that is across the country that is aimed at creating sustainable and meaningful change for queer people in and around advertising and marketing. We are all over the place and have been doing this work for years now. I'm coming up on almost 4 years with the organization as programming director, which is incredible. And so if you're looking to do any research on us, please take a look, dothework.com, work spelled WERQ. We are queer, shorthand, if you will. And here we are, as I said, December 18th, end of the year. We do this every year where we end with a little bit of a tribunal of folks coming together to talk about the year that has been, the things that we love, the things that we didn't, things that keep changing, things that won't stop changing. And it's just been a really unique year. So we'll have a lot to discuss and a lot to go through, which will be very exciting. I want to take a second to introduce myself more formally, and then I will hand it off to each of our panelists to introduce themselves as well. So as I said, my name is Arya Davachi. My gay job, as I mentioned, was programming director for Do the Work. My day job is I am an experiential producer and curator, currently working on a project for a very large tech company, evangelizing creators all over the world to come to the platform to tell their stories and to create IRL community moments, which I think is very exciting. My pronouns are he, him. I identify as a gay man very proudly. As I said, I'm in Southern California. I'm so excited to hand this off to our panelists who will introduce themselves in a similar fashion. Kaitlyn, I'm going to come to you first. Welcome to Do the Work. Tell folks a bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, how you identify, please.
Thanks. I'm Kaitlyn. I'm based in New York City. I am the CEO and co-founder of a creative communications agency called Scout Lab. We specialize in communications, branding, and campaign work. And our focus is on human and planetary health, though we do loads of cool stuff across plenty of industries. I started that in 2017, galvanized by the outcome of the 2016 election, my co-founder and I looked at each other and said, let's leave tech and create the agency that we wish we could have hired. Like I alluded to my background before, I started Scout Lab, a brief stint at Levi Strauss, rebranding them, and then before that was all in tech. My last startup, I started in 2015 and sold to ClassPass. But I've left those days behind and now support venture-backed startups, primarily scale impact-driven businesses.
Incredible.
Oh,
Welcome.
and
Yeah,
she, her, and I identify as a lesbian proudly as well.
welcome. So happy to have you. Andrew, I'm going to come to you next. Can you tell the folks a bit about you, where you are, what you do, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm Andrew. Let's start at the beginning. I grew up in Indiana. I got out as quickly as I could. I moved to New York. I worked at a dog hotel. And then Ogilvy hired me as a junior copywriter. I cut my teeth on IBM. Back when every 30-second spot had $1 million budget. Can you even imagine? It was a glorious time. Then it was 4 years in Paris. I worked at a very awards-hungry kind of wolf's den of an agency, and made it out alive and headed to Los Angeles, where I currently live. Nowadays, I head up creative for vacationtheagency.com. And I do this alongside two of my favorite people on the planet, Janina Volpe, your strategist's favorite strategist, and our resident design daddy, Tanner Shea. We're doing work for L'Oreal, for Kiehl's. That's me not turning off my notifications. Sorry, Arya, I said I would and I didn't. We are developing a project for Nike. We're doing, we just launched a luxury shopping destination in New York called Belmont Park Village. It's a great place for some holiday shopping. Visit today for 65% off the latest season's fashions. We have a very queer agenda at Vacation, and we have a very good time pushing it. Oh, and I wanted to say that I do some mentoring with Project Violet. I know some folks that do the work participate with me as well, and it's a great program. They pair tired old queens like myself with extraordinary young queer talent. And I will give a special shout out to Sonata Jones. Learn their name. You're going to need to know it one day. Glad to be here. Ari, thank you for having me. That's all.
Of course. Thank you for being here. Finally, last but not least, AJ, welcome to Do the Work. Can you tell the folks a bit about yourself, please?
Thanks, Arya. So great to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on the panel with you guys. Identify as a lesbian, out and proud, just as Kaitlyn, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And I've been in the business for, I don't know, a little over 20 years, and I feel like I spent most of my career at Leo Burnett. I like to say I got my PhD at Leo Burnett. I was there for 17 years, worked on pretty much every category you could imagine, from, fem care to insurance for Allstate to, Procter & Gamble to, Diageo rum and Starbucks and Kellogg's and all the things. So spent a lot of time there, had a couple of breakout successes, the Like a Girl campaign in 2016. We did that work, which was really empowering girls' confidence. We did a Super Bowl ad and a YouTube piece that did really well, got over like 150 million, views worldwide, and, helped redefine the stereotype of like a girl and sort of flip that on its head from a negative to a positive, take that playground insult into something that helped girls see themselves in a more confident way. And then, historically, I also, when I was at Leo Burnett, I actually did some work. I've done a lot of work in diversity and inclusion space. And I did a campaign right before the marriage equality came out for Equal Dreams. It was called Equal Dreams. We did it for Esurance. And it was really interesting because that was a time when a lot of brands were kind of finding their space, but Esurance was interesting because of the fact that they didn't have state laws. They were kind of an online company that they were able to actually provide protection for gay couples, LGBTQ couples at a time when many couldn't. And so we did a beautiful piece for them in advance of the equality legislation. And after that, I was at RGA for about 5 years. I did a lot of work with launching products like Bubbly and PepsiCo and LifeWater, and we did an Art by Women campaign. So I've done a lot of work in sort of gender equality space and inclusion, and I'm sort of really passionate about, diverse, authentic representation in my work. I kind of came from a background not in sociology, not in traditional background in advertising, but more of a background in sociology and political science, really understanding people and like human connection. And that's really always the lens that I've come at my work. So currently, that's sort of what inspired me to, during the pandemic, I kind of took a step back and said, similar to, I think, like Kaitlyn was saying, like, really, where do I want to put my energy? What do I want to focus on? And so launched Capital A. And so now I've got Capital A, which is an independent agency based on creating work that's really focused on authentic, audience-focused, creating affection and advocacy campaigns in the marketplace, where brands can really find those more genuine and meaningful connections when connecting with their audiences. So I tend to do anything from I'm a magnet for social impact and nonprofit. So I do a lot of work with those groups, but I also have, this past year, we did an advocacy campaign for Kimberly Clark around the women's issues and the backsliding we're seeing in women's progress globally, because they're such an important women's brand globally. The Progress Feels Like campaign. So we did a really big unified global campaign for them that ran in 23 different markets in multiple languages. So we're a little engine that could, a small indie shop and a network of creatives, and just trying to, like you said, do as much really good work and really authentic work as we can in this space.
I mean, y'all, what a crew. All right. Truly, I mean, this is the perfect crew of people, I think, to be having this conversation, and you are all incredibly impressive. So first things first, I don't know when the last time anyone told you all that, but I'm going to tell you that now. So congrats on being impressive. It's fun because you get to tell me a bit about yourselves, and you get to tell everybody a bit about like your history, and now I get to ask you like the things that you loved and the things that you hated, which really is the way I like to get to know people. So I would love to know, what is one thing you loved this year in terms of LGBTQ marketing and advertising, and why? Andrew, I'm going to come to you first. What do you have for us?
Oh, okay. Sure. I'm gonna cheat probably because I'm gonna say two things. Sorry. One is a very queer-owned, very queer-coded brand out of Paris who is just doing excellent work, and it's not totally explicitly queer all the time, but it's appealing to a broad audience using a lot of queer codes. And the other, Kaitlyn, is in your backyard, in your past. I'm going to talk about Levi's for a second too. So at first, Jacquemus takes the cake this year for me on social. Could probably mention Loewe too. They're playing a similar game. Maybe we'll talk about them later. But do you guys know Simon Jacquemus? He's the namesake designer, and he's a gay dude. And the communications are really, again, really queer coded, especially in their kind of rejection of like fashion industry norms. He's giving you like kooky humor. He's giving you like lo-fi social chic stuff. He is playing around with AI. He started playing around with AI at a time when there's still like a lot of skepticism around, not just around like the ethics of AI, but around the premiumness of AI, which, and it's particularly risky, I think, for a fashion brand, for a luxury brand to be playing with something that is like considered déclassé and tacky, you know? And he did this like wacky cartoon avocado video that like was so dumb, and it should not have worked, and it went totally viral. I got 5 million views or whatever. Everything he's doing is tongue-in-cheek. It's all camp. And it wouldn't exist without the queer culture that came before it. And he's out there like having fun and saying fashion's not serious, and it's not serious. So like, let's have a little fun. And I guess when he's been doing this since the beginning, like 12 or 15 years ago when he was first doing his shows back in Paris, the kids were like totally abuzz because he would have these shows in like weird places. He'd do like really guerrilla pop-up things. He'd like cast his friends as models. It was like just breaking a bunch of codes, and everybody was going bananas for it. And now he's breaking codes on social, and people are going bananas for it worldwide. And so, you know, kudos to Jacquemus for that. I wanted to maybe talk about something that's a little bit more directly queer with Levi's. And it's like, look, like what Levi's did for Pride this year. Kaitlyn, were you working at Levi's this year?
No.
Great. I think what they did this year was kind of like right down the barrel, okay. But the campaign around it was really nice. It was kind of like a 70s cowboy inspired little collection called, and they called it Not Our First Rodeo. Super cute line, totally works. But the reason they call it that is because they grounded the campaign in Levi's history. And what I didn't know, or what maybe I knew at one point and I forgot entirely, is that they have a really good track record. They were there in '82 passing out pamphlets on AIDS, which, if you know your history, took some gall from their leadership to do that. And, you know, and like they were the first Fortune 500 to give healthcare for like same-sex couples. Like they've been doing shit right for a long, long time. And so they, you know, sure, they just made a Pride collection, but they reminded us that they've been on our side the whole time. And if you have history on your side, use it to your advantage. That's a lesson that is not for just queer stuff. It's for any brand. If you did stuff right all along, you can hang a lot of stuff on your prior good behavior. So medium kudos to everybody.
Medium kudos to everybody. It's fun you bring up both of those examples. The Jacquemus I remember happening very distinctly, and I remember the AI also of like the big bags rolling around like they were the double-decker buses in London. I thought that was really smart. We'll talk about coding and like code switching and like the sort of like little bits of like, this is for queer people, if you know, you know. We'll talk about that in a little bit because I think that that is sort of a industry thing that's happening, and I want to talk about whether or not that's good or bad generally. In this, I think it's good, but generally I'm like, is this good or bad? And then I'm unabashedly going to say that I definitely bought a product from that Levi's drop this year because they had a man wearing a skirt. And as a man who likes to wear skirts, I was like, absolutely, I will buy this skirt. It's a cute skirt. I love a rodeo denim skirt. So Andrew, thank you, sir. Great examples.
A cute skirt.
Yeah, we love a cute skirt. AJ, I'm going to come to you next. What is something that you loved this year?
You know, it's, I have to say, like, this, and this is like, not to go with the negative, but it's few and far between, right? Like that's, I mean, that's kind of the larger theme, unfortunately, when you really have to scour back and think about it. I mean, again, I could take the same tact as Andrew, and there's a couple of things. I think that, you know, at a really like mass level, I think one of the brands that consistently shows up and has historically is Skittles, right? I mean, they're historically a brand that is playful, is colorful. They fully embrace, you know, I mean, their line is Taste the Rainbow. They fully embrace who they are as a brand and haven't caved under the pressure as a lot of brands have for being called woke. And so I think this year in particular, they, you know, for me, it's really important to see brands again, like obviously they change their packaging, they put a rainbow on it, just like so many brands do during Pride Month, but they actually, you know, they partner with GLAAD, they actually turned their activism really into more community-based and grassroots work this year by really creating a platform to connect more members of the LGBTQ community and facilitate that, which I think again just takes it to that more authentic, more deep, you know, you're not just flashing a commercial across the screen, you're not just showing up in the aisle and looking at, you know, kind of with a you know, with a special, you know, day packaging or a special month packaging for Pride, you know, they are doing the right things. They're donating and they're partnering with GLAAD actually, who's, you know, really diligent, obviously, in sort of making sure that these brands are not rainbow washing. And, you know, funny enough with Taste the Rainbow, they'd be in real trouble if they ever tried rainbow washing, but they do really do a great job. And so I love the work they do. They're very unapologetic about it. I thought the work that they did this year on that was great from just like when I think of like mass brands. But like a little piece that it has like a piece of my heart that I don't know if many people have seen that was out of Germany is called Rainbow Wool. Have you guys seen this work? Oh my God, we have to see this. It's so cool. There's this German, so there's an organization in Germany that's kind of the equivalent of our GLAAD. I think it's like the LGBTQ, I think. Forgive me if I got that exactly wrong because their acronyms are slightly different in their organization, but one of the members of that organization had a connection with this gay sheep farmer who has been wanting to do something in the space. And apparently, and I'm also a really big geek for data. A lot of the best work that I've done in campaigns that I've done is really based off of human insights and data. And they have this really interesting piece of data that like 1 in 12 sheep is gay. And so I don't know. And what's fascinating about it is that the rams, right, the male sheep are actually slaughtered if they can't produce, right? Like they can't reproduce. So they end up not being used for wool because they won't, you know, reproduce. And so they created this whole campaign to bring awareness to the fact that there's actually 62 countries in the world still that, you know, have a lot of rights restrictions on gays, LGBT, and the queer community. And so they quite literally skinned their campaign for human gay rights and queer rights in this campaign around, you know, trying to save rams and to, you know, so all of the wool, the rainbow wool is created by male rams, which I think is just so beautiful, and it's playful and it's fun. And the farmer who runs the sheep farm, like, is authentically, you know, a gay man who's been doing this for years and has been looking to do something and expand his his contributions to the community. And so they worked with a pretty big influencer to promote the campaign out there. What's his name? It's Klaus. I think his name's Klaus. I'm terrible. I'm gonna forget his name. Bill Collitz. Bill Collitz. He's like a singer, songwriter, rock and roll guy, you know, queer icon in Germany, but just very fun, very colorful, very playful. And they sold out their line in like, you know, like I think within like a day, you know. And of course, the cool thing is they're saying that now they've had a lot of interest from other organizations who authentically want to buy their sheep wool, like their gay sheep wool, the rainbow wool, and start, you know, you can buy clothes from them directly, but they also are going to partner with brands who authentically support these rights and will use it in their garments, in their retailing. And something like, I think they had 20 sheep, I think, for this first activation. So it wasn't a huge thing, but within, I think, Germany, it got a lot of attention, something like 20 billion impressions or something wild. But they went from like 20 sheep this first year, and it sounds like they're going to, because of the response and the engagement, they've now enrolled another 300 gay sheep, like 300 for like the next activation, which is just so cool. So I kind of can't wait till they see what they do next. So
I mean, justice for gay sheep. Honestly,
right?
like, what a twist.
I
Like,
know.
1 every 12? Like, wow.
Yes, I know. You should watch the ad though. The ad's really cool because it talks actually about like how prevalent homosexuality is in all species, right? Like, you know, but it's really, I think it's really just from a creative and strategic standpoint, I really appreciate how they leverage something like the, you know, the appeal and sort of the warmth and fuzzy and the non-controversial nature of like a sheep, and sort of this idea of male sheep being slaughtered because they're gay, what their wool is any worse. Like it's just so absurd. But the fact that they're leveraging that to help raise awareness of, you know, the restricted rights and, you know, some of the death policies, quite honestly, in some of the countries still around the world, and to actually use that to raise funds to help support these LGBT groups worldwide. So they actually distribute a lot of the profits to it as well, of course. So it's just, again, I'm a big fan of like the little engines that could, you know, those little ideas that can change the world, that can come from just a handful of people. So I just thought it was charming. I thought it was really impactful. And again, I thought it was really using something that's happening in sort of a category that you would never think about, like, you know, farming, to help raise awareness and support for the queer community. So it's like kind of my little favorite,
Yeah.
personally.
Oh, incredible.
Did anybody else see that? Did anybody else see this ad? I mean, again, it's because, you know, I obviously, I mean, us being in, you know, we spend a lot of time like keeping up with what the awards are and, you know, things like that. So when I see little glimmers of things that win in the good categories, and because I tend to do a lot of work in the impact and social space. So when I see glimmers of work like that, I'm always curious of the ones that, you know, where there aren't like, you know, 10 winners in every category, because we see all of those campaigns. But it's interesting, like, I think this was like a gold winner at Eurobest, and, you know, whatnot. So it's like, you know, somebody entered it somewhere because it was like a little, you know, dream project, but it had a really big impact.
Cute. That reminds me, you 1 in 12 sheep. I remember, I don't know if you guys grew up in the 90s. In the 90s, 1 out of every 10 people were gay. That's what we used to say. It was 10%. And it was like, that was taken as like a scientific fact. And I remember thinking about it all the time growing up. I remember looking at groups of 10 people and being like, which one of you is gay? And then the other month, I guess, maybe I don't know, a little chart showed up that I guess I'm just believing is fact, that 20% of Gen Z identifies as queer.
It's queer, yeah. Majority of them identify as bisexual, but yes, it is a growing number.
Oh, what a delight. How exciting. I mean, like, what is alpha going to be? Is it going to go up by 10% again? It's wonderful.
Right.
More gays.
More gays. Kaitlyn, I'm coming to you last but not least. Tell me something you loved this year.
I I think like thematically so much has been, I think there were like really good anecdotes addressed. AJ, like the idea of normalizing queerness and something that is like even unprovocative, which is why it's excellent. I think is like the moments that I enjoyed the most. It was awesome to see like Kim Petras like on a billboard on Houston Street. And I think that is a part of it, right? Like casting queer, like people or characters, is an important part of that, like kind of exposure to queerness, which makes it more normal. And therefore, I think in a lot of communities, first palatable and then accepted. Um, Thinking through too, I think that there was a little bit of a reckoning among leadership. I love that Andrew brought up Levi's. And they've done some really great campaigns, and they've always had a heritage in supporting the queer space because of Robert Haas, who was the CEO in the 80s. And he was like really galvanized by the federal response, or like lack thereof, to the AIDS crisis, and was like, I have employees that are affected by this. I have customers that are affected by this. To not acknowledge it and or do something about it is not leaderly, which is why he did something as provocative at the time as hand out, AIDS pamphlets in the headquarters of Levi's. And I think he also acknowledged that like Freddie Mercury made him cool. Like Elton John was wearing his product. Like Jake Gyllenhaal was head to toe in Levi's during his character for Brokeback Mountain. So I think that there's what I'm seeing is a little bit of a comeback or pendulum to that type of leadership too, where I'm understanding that my consumers fundamentally exposed to queer people, loves them, and or is a queer person. So might I like take care of them by casting queer characters in my commercials or my campaigns, or including them in, my larger marketing plans, as a part of the conversation. And I think that is like the most exciting let's say like trend, or I don't even want to, I think cultural shift is a better word to describe it, that I'm seeing universally. I also, the one last point I'll make is it was an election year. It was a really intense election year, especially towards the trans community, which was a huge, which was a central figure in the attack of, the Republican Party. And I don't even want to conflate the Republican Party to Trump. And that was that I think made people realize that you don't really get a choice to be political or non-political. Like you either, care about humanity or you don't. And to be silent was to be complicit in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of what I noticed from my clients and supporting them through the election cycle was that you couldn't be like politically neutral. You had to do something that showed support towards or against humanity, and silence or not participating was usually to the negative. And I think that was good. I think like you can't be apolitical. It's like, it's just not really an option anymore because of the way that our world has always worked and works now.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting you bring it up because I had a very dissimilar experience where I felt like this year there was a lot of quiet, particularly actually around June. And listen, as Do the Work has said from the beginning, like we're gay every day. So like Pride is a really good time, but like you can talk to us all the time. But it did feel like, particularly this year, one of the things that I personally like really didn't like was that during Pride, I was like, oh, we're really not saying very much. It's very quiet out in these streets. And so I want to know from you very quickly, each of you, what is something that you didn't like? And then we can talk about industry shifting. Andrew, I'm going to come to you first. What you have for me that you don't like?
Well, you asked me to think of something I didn't like, and it was Pride. You got the right answer. Literally the whole thing. Vacation came out during Pride, and I think the reason that we got a nice little article about it was because it was in the context of what our little press bubble was calling quieter Pride. And all of the brands, a lot of brands, refusing to make as much noise in the wake of Bud Light and Dylan Mulvaney. Do we need to revisit what happened there? Or are we all remember very well what happened then?
I think we remember. I think it's left a
Yes.
shadow, a deep shadow. Yeah.
Yeah. And some really great brands, one that I won't name, didn't make a Pride collection for the first time in 25 years. And it was like, why? Well, okay. And Target, of course, like was like famously didn't do anything, didn't do as much as normal, and then admitted to it and was like, yeah, that's right, we're not doing much, which somehow it was like worse that they admitted it, just like, I don't know, deny it or something.
Right.
Like that was like, sometimes transparency, it doesn't help. But I mean, Pride is like, yeah, it's like, what is it? What is it? What is Pride? It is like, it is a corporate mess. And for like me and for my pals in New York and in LA, like it doesn't matter that much. But for like a teenager in Nebraska, like seeing that, a big company that really exists says, hey, so gay people exist, queer people exist. Like, maybe they don't feel so alone. Maybe they feel like, I don't know. I mean, it would have made like that stuff made one of the little flavors I got of it in the 90s in Indiana, it meant something. It really meant something.
Yeah.
I mean, I would even argue that like, yes to the kids in Indiana, but also like kids people everywhere. Like it's like we're at a place, and Kaitlyn, I didn't mean to, slash and burn your comment, because I do think that if you're surrounded by people who are doing good work, like that is something that we must be celebrating. But I do think, Andrew, like it's everywhere now. Like every queer person, young, old, newly out, been out, never had to come out because we all just knew, like everyone needs that moment of like, yes, we're here. But I do also feel like the agreement of like, particularly those of us who I think work in this world and understand this world of like, what is Pride? Because 10 years ago was like every corporate entity was in the parade and that felt wrong. And now like they're not in the parade and this feels wrong. And it's like, wait, what is this? But Kaitlyn, I want to circle back to you because I want you to also tell me something you didn't like. I think that's important to like give you that opportunity as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I hear you. I think I'm biased because I work so heavily in a space where my clients are like trying to achieve or are in hyper growth, so achieving a level of scale that requires innovation and a strong point of view. I don't think of like Target as the bleeding edge of like queer point of view, though Target, and I've done this as well, is always referenced as like what not to do. Actually, I was going through a bunch of disco reports that we do in collaboration with Do the WeRQ. And 2023 has a lot of really interesting information or data that we pulled about LGBTQ consumers and their relationship with boycotts. A lot of people use them as a way to, again, like show their values through their dollars by like ignoring and or going closer to a brand that they perceive as good or bad. But there is also some research that shows that boycotts actually have nominal long-term impact to overall revenue. And so I'm always disappointed, I guess, when I hear about brands like Target or Anheuser-Busch or Bud Light more specifically, bending to the the sword of the squeakiest wheel when the squeakiest wheel is homophobic or racist or misogynist or usually all of the above. And so, yeah, you see more of that. You see that year round, but you definitely hear about it during June. And that was disappointing.
Yeah. Also, shout out to Disco. And if folks here aren't familiar with Disco, an incredible organization that does incredible data research and analysis. AJ, coming to you last but certainly not least, something that you didn't love.
I mean, I think it's again, it's like the theme is the absence, I think, I think going back to what you said, it's the sort of the silence, because like the silence is right, the not saying it or the sort of cowering from the controversy almost does more damage in a lot of ways. And so I think when you're like, you think of the moment of the whole Dylan Mulvaney piece with Bud Light, and it's such an American iconic brand, and it was such an incredibly cool progressive thing that was something that they embraced. But to then have them so quickly kind of recoil from that and not, I think there was a missed opportunity. Like, for example, I mean, I think they ran within Anheuser-Busch, 3 different Super Bowl commercials. I mean, I think they did run some gay galloping Clydesdales, but I I don't know that like, I feel like there's a huge missed opportunity, right? Like what changed other than the naysayers? Like, does that mean that they like the fact that they weren't willing to double down or to do something more powerful with that many viewers? I mean, we all know in our business that Super Bowl is the biggest media stage available. And I'm always really, I find myself often disappointed by, and I think it happens within our community, I think it happens in a lot of brands, that when there is a backlash to taking a stand on, whether that's related to a gun rights issue, whether that's related to, like standing up for queer people, like in this case, there tends to sort of not be a doubling down, and I wish there was more of that to sort of, again, because I think that's why we fall backwards too much, is that we don't have enough leadership in these spaces. It's like they're happy to try to partner and to sort of try it out and to try to, you said, reach us and use our dollars, try to reach our dollars. But when the rubber hits the road, like, they could have done something really powerful and emotional and used Dylan on the Super Bowl to double down against that. And that would have been, that would have been something, it's the kind of company where it's like, really, how much money are you going to lose? Like, people will drink your beer. Like, come on, like you're not going to go broke. People will drink your beer, but just have a backbone, and that's just where it's like, if it's like you almost sympathize with like smaller companies who maybe made a misstep than someone like that, where you have higher expectations. So I actually think it's the absence of, like you said, it's a lot of the brands that we saw with the Targets and the Pride and moments like Super Bowl where, I think, was it, Volkswagen had, everybody's like, oh, Volkswagen has a gay lesbian wedding, like, and it's like for, half a second. It's like, I appreciate that. I really do. But, it feels very safe. It feels very like, okay, we're only going to do this much and make sure it's part of the larger vignette. And you know what I mean? Like, and again, everything is progress and I appreciate it. It does feel like, in these bigger moments when the rubber really hits the road, I wish I saw more brands like putting a stake in the ground to double down on what they started in the first place.
Yeah.
I have just one thing to add. I totally agree with that. And I think it's like we have plenty of examples of like brands doing that. And the fact that like here we are in 2024 still talking about like the dumbest internal reaction to an effective campaign is like mind-boggling. I always go back to, and again, another, I think just iconic, probably my favorite brand campaign in my lifetime is Nike's Kaepernick campaign.
Totally.
And we actually stole from the framework of the campaign because they, of course, had the iconic ad. And then they had a bunch of people, boycott them. And they had what we call the cancel campaign, which is as they were getting canceled, they put out another ad that said it was a video and some guidance on how to burn our shoes safely. And so whenever my team specifically pitches a campaign, we have our campaign. And if we are effective in galvanizing people to boycott a brand, which I think often is a metric of success, you need to know how much of who you're attracting towards you as much as who you're trying to repel. You execute the cancel campaign, which just reinforces the perspective of the original campaign. So I hope for more of that in 2025. It's like a really easy framework. It works when it's done well. It's just like, don't back down from effectively executing a campaign to marginalize community and then leaning into
they say what, like all PR is good PR, right? Like, I mean, but a lot of it comes down to the person who's sitting at the top of the organization and whether or not they have the gumption to be able to be able to see the nuance of that, right? Like to be able to see beyond the thing that's right in front of them to say, well, prepare a cancel campaign because they probably are going to, they probably are, but you know what? We're going to get a lot of news about it and we're going to come out with this response to it. And then you know what? A week from now, they're still going to be drinking our beer.
Yeah. Or it's like, I do think it's like fundamentally a business decision. Like I think
Yeah.
we like ride on the back of really great creative, but like the campaign drove
Mm.
over $160 million worth of earned media, and increased its market cap by 6 billion and increased sales by like 31% during like the 3 to 6 month period that the campaign launched. So it's like not just effective creative, it's like there's discernible business impact. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah, the Bud Light thing is crazy, but any brand that doesn't really like lean into their campaign, I'm always shocked
Well,
by.
because you build real affection and loyalty with your audience too when you do that, right? Like when
Right.
Nike did
But that's
that,
also the thing though, is like then when you back away from it, I'm like, wait, you were lying to me.
right? And now you're really burned that community,
Now you've upset everyone, and
right?
that's a shame. It's like you couldn't even honest. Also, for me as a person just witnessing, I'm like, you couldn't stand behind her. You couldn't
Right.
like take care of the talent who like knew that this was for them kind of a crazy risk to take, and you
Right.
abandoned her. Like that to me is something that I, that going back to the Kaepernick thing is like, no, you got to stand behind the people that are standing next
That's
to you.
right.
Like
That's right.
that person's taking the risk to be your talent, and you've
Yeah.
now abandoned them. And to me, it's like, oh well, now we know where you really stand. My God.
Well, and because yes, so there's the super personal level of that, which I think is a really good point. But I think similarly, what you were saying at the beginning of this, of like, there are so many people that identify with the vulnerability that it takes to do that. And you have now really, really kind of traumatized people who have often gone through a lot of trauma themselves in many different ways. And so that's all it's probably one of the worst things you can do, right? Like I think Andrew, you were talking about Target. Like I know that was that they had a huge decline in sales because of everything that they were, hiding all of their pride gear in the back of rooms and not really promoting it. And, and the consumers, like, the LGBTQ queer community, like made it known by their pocketbooks that was not okay.
I remember at the time, Target, there were like physical altercations in Targets though, where customers were coming and like assaulting Target employees who were refolding their rainbow t-shirt.
Right.
So it really, I hadn't thought about that until just you said something that it was like, oh shit, like there is something to reconcile there between what Target did and didn't do, and like the reality of the political climate that we're in and their
You know what?
necessity.
Like but like why not? Okay, like for example, this is where it's like, okay, that is horrible, right? That there's people folding clothes, like who are literally just doing their job, being assaulted for this, right? Like for supporting whatever the line of pride gear, like they're just literally merchandising. But what if Target had taken the security footage of those people being assaulted and turned that into an ad or Super Bowl ad? You know what I mean? And took a stand and did something with it and said, like, this is not okay. We've doubled down on our security in store because of this, like that's where it's like, there are always opportunities for brands to sort of see something differently in terms of what their real values are. And so
Yeah, I just wonder if it's a bit of a microcosm, and this is something I would love to talk about with all of you. I wonder if it's a microcosm of what's happening around the term or phrase DE and I, and like what's happening to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as
what's
a person,
what's DE&I again?
right? Like what, like and now it's such a weaponized term or phrase, and we've come really so backwards since 2020 in that regard. And we can talk about the realities of what that was like in 2020 as people who are in the industry and like really sat in rooms and we're like, here we are having these conversations with these people, around like people being like, no, we have to do something, it's time. And I'm like, we've been trying to have these conversations for a long time. But now I wonder, like, Kaitlyn, I would love to hear from you as you like are doing the work that you're doing of like how does DEI, diverse, like inclusion, like evolve into the work that you're doing? What are the conversations that you're seeing? Because I think for those of us who, are living in like, agency ad land, it's starting to disappear a little bit in a really scary way.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I get to live in a little bit, and perhaps, I don't know, anyone who gets to run their own thing, you kind of get to like protect yourself. We work with some big brands, but I feel like because we are smaller, we just get to really be choosy about who we work with. I will say I worked alongside Lesbians Who Tech. It's one of the coolest conferences you'll ever go to. They invite everyone into these really cool queer spaces where you'll have people like Brian Chesky and Kamala Harris and Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird like talk on topics like AI and also like cool cultural, seasonal, whatever. And we worked with them on a brand exercise that like fundamentally had to do with their name, because like lesbian as a word has so much baggage to it, and in fact is like not good for business. One of my like the unlocks for me was when the founder was like, we get picked up by email spam filters all of the time because lesbian is associated to male porn, or porn rather made for men. And that's like so heartbreaking that we really do have to like either reclaim language or create new language to push the bleeding edge of our queer culture from like what can be really what can already be really tainted by like the homogeny we're leaving behind or the heteronormativity that we're leaving behind. So like I see it and I understand that DEI budgets all but contracted or disappeared. We worked with clients in the space, and I think it's like a harder battle. I think you have to, instead of using the term, it's almost as like embroiled in baggages like ESG, where it's like instead we're really focusing on the impact or performance of diversity or representation. And I have noticed my clients either inspired by my team and or proactively talking a lot about conversations surrounding equity. So how do we show up and advocate for like a more equitable future, which I feel like lends to this what I hope to see is like an optimistic focus on progress instead of like the apathy of the status quo, which can be all but crushing, especially in a year like the one we've had.
Yeah, and I think you said something that resonates with me, and I want to toss it to Andrew and AJ, which is like either you have to reclaim language or make your own. And that's something that I feel like I could apply to the entire industry of like either we have to like reclaim this industry and like build it again, or we have to make a new one, right? And that's why it's interesting to have folks like you all here. And Andrew, AJ, would love to hear from you all about like in making your own companies, what like with sort of DEI, if you will, because you are queer people at the on the masthead, like what are the things that you're carrying into this that you do hope to see like more like, you know, holding company agencies do and like seeing more of that industry change? Because right now it seems to be sliding in the wrong direction, maybe. Andrew, do you want to take it first?
Sure. You know, when we had to think a lot about launching last year, and we, you know, had an agenda of working with people that we wanted to work with, whose politics we believed in, who like we think were like good people. And it was really complicated because you can't ask your client like, hey, is your boss gay? Or like, you know, we want to work for like gay-owned brands or whatever. It's like it's a really tough line to walk. And so what we did as a result is we were just really out and obnoxiously proud ourselves. We're just like, we're queer owned, we're female, you know, we prioritize queer talent, we prioritize female talent. And we've just been like kind of annoying about it and just like really, it's just right, it's all the time, it's up there. And so it's like, you know, if you're knocking at our door and you want to do a project, we don't really have to worry about who's across the table, because, you know, we've been really clear about what our agenda is. And so, you know, it's hard to try to guess or evaluate what's going on the other side of the table.
Yeah. AJ, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, identify with a couple of things like what Andrew's saying, but also with what Kate was saying about, I mean, there's a real, for as hard as it is to have your own business, there is a real joy in being able to pick who you want to work with and to be discerning about who you think are going to be great partners, who has the values that line up with the kind of work you want to do, or that who you actually want to collaborate with, and, you know, who's in it with you for the right reasons. And so, you know, similarly, you know, again, I'm I've always been pretty, I'm as gay as the day is long. I think people can tell pretty easily, and I don't hide it. And my identity in the industry, you know, as an LGBT woman, lesbian, half Ghani, I like to say, because my family's half Afghan and half American. You know, you know, I've got many spots and colors in my background. And so I tend to be very like, you know, I was an ad color honoree for all my work in diversity. So everything I do is very top, it's very top of mind for my work. And it's always been evident in my work. And I don't really shy away from it because I'm just, from a human perspective, I personally don't feel good like working with people who I know are like that is not the same value set. Like because I think any of us can identify with the fact that like when you're in this industry, especially on, you know, this creative industry, you are creatives are passionate about these things. They put a lot of themselves into the work. And so, you know, it's an extension of yourself. Creativity is an extension of yourself. And so you want to know that there is nothing getting in the way of that when you're doing a business. And so for me, you know, it's all about, similar to what Andrew is saying, like I put it out on, you know, the way that we think about the businesses, you know, we're 100% about authenticity, female founded, diverse, you know, I think, you know, like diversity is forward. I mean, whenever we do a project, we're always curating teams based on what the client needs and whether and who the right talent set is for that representation. And so, you know, it's really something that we're pretty thoughtful about. It's something that I've always been thoughtful about, even when I was building teams as an executive inside agencies, because you have to be really deliberate about it. When I was at RGA, we had the most, like the most diverse office of all the RGA offices. Like the Chicago office was the most diverse for hires. It had the most women. It had the most multicultural folks, which we were really proud of, you know, because we were very deliberate about making sure we had the right voices and representation across disciplines to add to that. So, you know, a lot of it is right now it's about having that control, but being really, I think you have to be really deliberate. And I think, and again, similar to what we were saying about clients and brands, I think in agencies, we need more leaders to be deliberate about how they hire, about not backing down from their policies, about doubling down on what matters for the culture, because we know queer people in particular are, you know, are prevalent in the creative industry. And so it's, at the end of the day, it's good for business as well. Like if they're smart, it's, you know, not only should they do it for the right reasons because it's the right thing to do, but like they're shooting themselves in the foot as a business if they want the best talent in the world to sort of even be thinking twice about that.
Right, totally. I wonder, we've got just a few minutes left, and I like to usually end these end of year moments with just a bit of like, maybe less, maybe this year a little less magic crystal ball and more of like our hopes and dreams that we'll put into a paper crane and send off into the universe. I'm wondering what each of you wants to see next for our community, and as it pertains to the marketing and storytelling that happens through advertising for queer people. AJ, I'll start with you. What is something that you want to see next?
I would like to see, I mean, as an industry, I would like to see more, of these companies, the bigger established companies and agencies in our industry, also speaking out about, you know, where they stand on DE&I and not backing down. You know, FCB has a chief diversity officer. And you know, I saw recently that they doubled down on that as a policy, that's something that they're embracing, and they're saying we're not backing down. And I have such respect for that. I mean, as a big company that has that is also a holding, you know, has a holding company that they're answering to, you know, I think we all know what being inside of holding companies is like, and that's tough. That's a tough thing to navigate. And so I really appreciated even that one voice of the many, you know, the big companies saying, you know, speaking to that and making a statement about that and doubling down on how they are going to be, you know, not cutting back and only building that department within their organization. So, so that I hope that there's more of that. I hope that more of the, you know, what are our quote unquote leading shops, you know. I am also really encouraged by all of the growth of the indie agencies right now, because I think that actually is, there are many reasons why there's a growth for indie agencies, but I think this idea of being untethered from the, you know, things that are kind of not healthy or create good creative environments, or that lead to good work. I mean, there are new ways of doing things that are, the industry's being disrupted. And I think a lot of that has to do with culture, right? The culture that we create inside of agencies. So I'm hopeful and excited to see more indie agencies flexing their muscle in this space too, and embracing and encouraging more clients to step out of their comfort zone to do more really good work for our community in these spaces, especially the trans community, I would say in particular right now. I think they've taken a horrific beating as of late, and I think that they deserve a really powerful campaign. They deserve a really big moment, and I really hope that you know, maybe we'll see something. I'd like to see something, you know, in Super Bowl that takes a stand for that community and does something authentically powerful. I'd love to see a brand step up and do that, especially in this environment where we've seen so much cowering. So
Cool.
that's my hope.
Yeah. Kaitlyn, what are you wanting to see?
I just like want to see more gay people. I want to see more queer people. I want to pitch more queer people. I want to get hired by more queer people. I want to see more queer founders. I want to see more queer investors. Queer people should start agencies. They should go for the promotion. I think visibility is so important. So I just like wish universally to maybe only interact or to see more queer people writ large. I just think that's like that is where we started this conversation, and I think the perfect way to leave it.
Thank you. I agree. Andrew?
I think that was the perfect place to leave it. You guys are speaking the truth. That's what we need to see more of. And maybe let's bring it to LinkedIn. I just joined LinkedIn. What is it for? It is the vibes are totally off. We should bring a bunch more support, a bunch of queer
LinkedIn
love.
should be gayer.
LinkedIn needs to be. We need to queer LinkedIn.
We need to gay up
Queer
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. That's my mission. We need
I will say to all of you, you know, we talk a lot in this conversation about, you know, lifting up the queer voices, making space for queer voices, and I hope that you all have the privilege of getting to hire a ton of people in 2025. That's what I pray for all of you. I want that for all of us, because that's like the way that this happens for our community. And I think we all also kind of, each of us touched upon like, you know, the time that we spent in the holding companies and like the like difficulties of that. And in just speaking with all of you for the last 50 something minutes, I'm like, we could do great work with young queer minds and talent and like really lifting those people up. And it's on us. I think that's something that I've really learned this year, is that like, it's on us to do that. No one has time to do that on our behalf anymore, if they ever did. And so I just am so thankful for all of you for coming and having this conversation with me. I feel like we could talk for hours. And I'm so thankful that you are all doing what you do, and that you all, specifically you three, like have carved your lanes, are doing it your way, and are like unapologetically who you are, because that is shockingly rare in these crazy times. Before we go, I mean, now it's like kind of weird because I'm gonna be like, where can people get into contact with you? And all of you are going to say LinkedIn. But Andrew, do you have an answer that's
We're
not
taking
LinkedIn?
it over. The gays are taking over LinkedIn.
Yeah, Andrew, where can people find you if not on your straight LinkedIn file?
No, follow us on Instagram, Vacation the Agency.
Fantastic. Kaitlyn, where can people find you?
Feel free to email me. It's my first name at scoutlab.com. You can check out scoutlab.com, and we are Scoutlab Co on Instagram if you want to check out our work.
Incredible. AJ, where can people get into contact with you?
Obviously, LinkedIn. You can come to Capital A. You can come to find me, AJ Hassan. Of course, you can message me there, but we also have a site, capitalacreative.com, where you can fill out a little get in touch, and it'll come to me in my inbox. So, you know, anything we can do, and you want to be in touch and talk about how we can make LinkedIn gayer or anything else gayer, we're here to help.
Yes. This is now the new think tank of people working with LinkedIn gayer.
I know. I think we have like an assignment.
Yeah, the four of us have work to do. I want to thank all of you again. I want to thank again everyone at Do the Work who makes this possible. Like, it is really just such a large group effort, and I'm the person who gets the pleasure of sitting here and talking to incredible people all the time. We do this every month. We will be back next month, and the month after that, and the month after that, talking about gay stuff all the time. So if you're interested and you want to join us, meet me at Do the Work. You three can come back anytime you'd like. I am so happy to have been able to spend time with you. I hope you have a great rest of your year and you get some rest because you all definitely deserve it.
Thanks, Ari.
You've
Of
been
course.
amazing. Thank you, Arya.
Really
Okay, talk
glad.
soon. Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care.